Those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all
Nerds!
International. With the hyphen.
The Murder Hobo Show presents the Savage Rifter Podcast.
Oh, where are we?
Oh my god, there's a robot!
What? Run away!
I don't know what's happening.
Oh, it's like we're falling through rips in the time-space continuum.
Look out, we're in the middle of water!
There's only one way through this. Are you with me?
Yeah.
We must fight.
The Savage Rifter Podcast.
Welcome to the Savage Rifter Show, episode 19. I am one of your hosts, Gary, a.k.a. the Murder Hobo, and I am here with none other than the world-renowned and infamous riff superstar, DJ Jazzy Diaz.
Y'all ready for this?
It's been a while since I had to say that. What's going on, Victor?
Ladies and gentlemen, I am back. So is my favorite murder hobo, Gary. We've been a bit on a hiatus / trying to work us to death at our jobs. And here we are once again, picking up where we left off, episode 19 of the Savage Rifter. Welcome back, Gary.
It's very exciting. Yes, I'm happy to be back. I'm excited to be here. We got some stuff. I did some reading. The Humble Bundle came through, dude, and I bought into that. So I have all the stuff. 4 weeks ago, I think the Humble Bundle came out for riffs. And there was you could get 20 books, like 20 some odd books. So I did that. And on my cell phone, I have my podcast or my PDF reading deal will read to you.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So you've been playing catch up on all the background for all the riffs books, huh?
I just went through the one from Canada. It turns out that where I live is just basically a nuclear wasteland. There's nothing left of Vancouver. It turned into a big turd.
The United States has to bury its way somewhere, Gary.
Right. It's pretty much in my backyard. So there was a bunch of stuff on that. The first part of the book was actually pretty interesting. Some of the history and stuff like that, what's happening and all of that. And then the last half of the book was just a lot of stats, figures, and mechanics that deal with how to survive in cold climates and stuff. But it's funny.
It gets a little cold in Canada.
Yeah, once in a while.
All of us can absorb that below 30 degrees for 50 days in a row, you know.
So this when you order stuff through Drive-Thru RPG, it tags all of the pages with your name and the file number. And so as my thing would speed read through all of it, then it would get to the end and it would be like, Gary McCallum, order number 55715555, and every page. So I had to listen to that like 90 friggin' times, man. It was pretty funny. That said, this is a podcast all about Savage Riffs. We're going to break down some Savage Riffs piece by piece so Victor can teach me and you, the listener, how to play, enjoy, and understand riffs. What are we doing today, Victor? Gear part 2, buddy, right?
All right. Yeah, exactly. We're going to be talking about mine and your favorite things, weapons. Everything from close combat weapons to range weapons. We're going to be going through armor piercing. We're going to be going through ranges, all the stats that go with that. What are the heavy weapon rules? How does toughness work against some weapons? How does armor work against weapons? And all that fun stuff that we call riffs boom guns. If you've never seen a boom gun before, trust me, once you've seen one, you're going to want to fire it as often as you can.
The emphasis on boom.
Yeah, mega shaboom. That I really love. So when we talk about boom guns, ladies and gentlemen, and for those of you who are not familiar with the riffs world, and most of you probably are, we're talking about the infamous Glitter Boy railgun. But it's not just the Glitter Boy. There's multiple other railguns that are out there. It just happens to be that the Glitter Boy railgun happens to be the boom cannon, the one that makes the biggest noise and shreds the most armor and does the most damage.
I found the most impressive part about that whole thing, this is going to sound so dumb, but when I first started reading Savage Riffs, because I was never into old school riffs, I did D&D for Forgotten Realms. But when I came into Savage Worlds and picked up the Savage Rifts, this is so dumb. The coolest part about the boom gun is like that you have to, your boots have those pylons that anchor into the ground that you have to lock down before you fire this thing, or you just like shoot off into the distance. I'm like, that is so cool. What a great idea. Anyways, so dumb.
No, it is a cool idea. I mean, just the fact that you have a cannon, and it's a howitzer, pretty much. It's a miniaturized howitzer that fires I think it's 100 small needles or thin pieces of high-grade titanium, all in one shell at subsonic speed. So it's firing it faster than the speed of sound. So the explosion around the model is just the concussive force of the air of the gun being fired, the air as it releases through all the vents and through the machine. But you can fire a rail gun or the boom gun, the Glitter Boy boom gun, without using the laser pylons that drill into the ground in, just a half a second, drill into the ground to anchor you. You can fire it, but you're going to have a hell of a time trying to get up from all of that. Just the people around you even. Like I said, once you fired a rail gun, you learn what not to do or where not to be standing. Most Glitter Boy pilots know to announce it to their party and say, hey, guys, get away. I'm going to fire this thing. And they run for the hills, run for cover, get out of the blast zone, so to speak.
What a neat mechanic, though, eh? You actually have to lock yourself down before you fire this weapon. I think that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Let's check out the news and see what's happening in the news section for a little bit here before we get into doing some gear stuff. Let's go find out what's new in the community.
Hey there, Mr. Suit-wearing guy. Yes, that's me. Don't I know you from someplace before? Yeah, I do know you. What's new with you, man? Well, I suppose I could tell you what's new.
From the Rifts.
This says what's new this week in the Rifts community, but this is basically what's been going on for the last 2 months while me and you were on hiatus. That's pretty much what it was. So I got a question for you.
That's for sure.
Well, on Aduses, I guess. Sean Masters asked a question in the G Plus channel about leadership edges that I found interesting, and I wanted to talk about this for a little bit because in the leadership edges grant bonuses to subordinates, making them more effective, reliable, or durable. And these edges apply only to a number of subordinates within 5 feet, the command radius, it says in quotes, and are not cumulative with the same edge from other leaders. Subordinates may benefit from different leadership edges by the same or different leaders. Now, see, this kind of makes sense if you're playing a fantasy game. You would have to be within the area of something, but when you're playing a futuristic or sci-fi game like Rifts would be, where you would have like a headset, would you allow your players, maybe the commander standing up on top of the hill and he's got his headset on looking over the battle and he's giving orders and they're all a couple hundred yards away. How are you going to roll with that?
I've been rolling with it just like we used to do it in Rifts, the old way. If you've got a radio, and most radios have I think a 5 or 10 mile radius. A lot of them, you've got to remember technology isn't around. You don't have satellite uplinks. You don't have relay stations, radio relay stations in order to be able to radio, across the planet or across the state. A couple 100 miles, you better have line of sight or you may not have radio contact with a lot of your team. So for the most part, a short 5 to 10 mile radius is about the maximum radio contact that you can have with your team, especially if you're talking about technological contact, radar contact, pings, FIFO, all the different stuff that a lot of the technology we use today in order, to have that advanced combat and advanced technical warfare. So you don't have a lot of that when you're in Rifts. But if you take a look at it from this point of view, back in, the olden days, back in medieval days, how did commanders talk to armies that were over a mile, stretched out across a mile? They used to use flags and different symbols and runners to be able to communicate effectively and quickly to get their troops to do what they need to do. So I kind of disagree with you when it comes to the fantasy, where you have to be within a certain range to use it. But if you have the right support system or you've done your homework, you could easily use those leadership edges in a fantasy setting, in a modern setting, or even a sci-fi setting like Rifts. It just depends on the flavor that you want to add to it. And I've used them every which way in between. Sometimes I've said, you're in a tight room in a dungeon, or you're under the castle. Your leadership can't work for people outside the castle. It doesn't make sense, right? But if you're in open warfare on a hill, you have line of sight to your targets, and you have a 5-mile radar range and a 10-mile radio range. Sure, why not? Why can't you make calls out as a leader and tell you and your group to flank, or to move back, or to be careful they're being outnumbered or overrun, or incoming missile fire or whatever? That's half the fun of the game sometimes, is making that up on the table. But that's 30 years of GM experience kind of talking. You've seen a lot of it. You've seen a lot of different ways to run it. But whatever works at your table is going to work for you. So just talk to your players and go over it and see how it works.
Yeah, you hear that, Pinnacle? Screw you and your stupid 5-foot command radius, according to Victor. I think the only reason that I would actually sort of take any issue with it is because depending on the leadership edge, I think there's edges that allow you to go like double the radius and stuff like that. And if somebody at your table is putting points into that skill to have the larger area of effect, you're kind of like, if you're letting somebody go by line of sight through a comm system and skipping over the 5-inch or 5 square kind of a deal, you're sort of like screwing somebody out of who put points into taking the edge to get a little bit better. Anyways, I agree with you though. I'm like, if you can see people.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally see what you're saying. You have to look at it from a different point of view though. When you look at Savage Worlds, Savage Worlds was meant to be played with a small battle map, 2 foot by 3 foot, more or less, 2 square feet, 2 by 3 square feet. And that battle map, you only have about 60 to 100 feet of actual control of a combat area. So if you're in a small skirmish type game, which is what a lot of what Savage World games tend to be, you don't have 20 people per side, usually. In most Savage World settings, you don't have that many people. So you might have a dozen combatants, 6 party members, 6 enemies, maybe a few odds and ends, maybe 20 at the most, within a certain tight radius or small groups fighting each other. When you look at it from squares instead of range of feet, it makes more sense from a skirmish combat level. But Rifts throws all that out the window like it does everything else, and it brings in the kitchen sink, and now you have line of sight across the Grand Canyon, 15-mile range with weapons that have a 50-mile range and are accurate at 50 miles. It kind of throws all that. You just kind of throw the dice and hope and pray that you're running it right, because there's no wrong way to do it. Just as a GM, you have to make a decision a split second at the table to rule it and keep running the game. If someone really wants to sit there and argue about the rules, you probably shouldn't be playing at the table because they're too busy looking up the rules instead of playing the game. But that's my table. That's my opinion. That's how I run the games. I make a note of it, or I have somebody look it up later, and then we kind of discuss it in a tribunal at the end of the game to kind of go over what we missed, what we didn't miss, or what we liked or what we didn't like. Half the time we forget about it and we don't even talk about it. We hit, we missed, we kept going, we got closer, they came up with other tactics, and the game keeps playing. But play it however you want to play it at your table. There's multiple ways to do it. You don't have to run it just as it's written. But what I've seen, rules as written, Savage Worlds tends to be a small skirmish level game where you have tight quarters, very small spaces to be controlled or fighting in, whereas Rift really, flips that on its head. You can be fighting in valleys, fighting across miles of cornfields, miles of city, underground, above ground, in the air, underwater, and about 101 other places we haven't even talked about before. But that's what makes it unique. That's what makes Rifts kind of special that way. And it's really difficult to play that if you've never had or been forced to make those decisions at the table. So play whatever works at your table. Gary's way is one way, my way is another way. Whatever you guys think that's work. And if you guys have any ideas about this, post it up on the Google Savage Rifts page. I'd love to hear more about the conversation about what you guys are doing and how you guys are handling it. Because just because me and Gary said it doesn't mean it's the only way it can be done.
No, it's the only way to do it. You do it the way I say.
I'll send you the check later, Gary.
Thanks, pal.
You're welcome.
I cannot find the anything can happen Thursday, Dustin was at it again with this gem bit.
All
I'm
right,
not even
so
sure
if
which
you
one
guys
it
are
was.
listening, it looks like Gary's having trouble looking up where that can be found. So when you log into the Google Plus communities page for Savage Rifts, on the left-hand side under filter, it's listing all the different categories in alphabetical order. If you click on the words that say anything can happen Thursdays, right under Adventure Seeds, it consolidates all of those to just those topics that are for anything can happen Thursdays. And you can see all kinds of Dustin Smith's entries for ACHT, the acronym we use for that.
Yeah, I'm down with that. The link that is in the show notes, though, however, I thought it would lead me to one particular Anything Can Happen Thursday that I thought was really interesting. And now that I'm looking at them, they're all interesting, and I don't know which one I want to talk about. So, yeah, I don't know what to say. Just check out Dustin Smith's Anything Can Happen Thursday, because they're actually all really cool. It might have been...
I've talked to Dustin Smith about that before, privately and on Google Plus, and I've told him, you need to take every single one of those and put them into a little, like a summary sheet of like an Adventure Seed, 20 rundown or 1 through 100, and just like, I don't have a game to play now. Let's play Savage Rifts and roll, and you can pick one. And like this one, it says, at dusk, the party feels drawn to a hillside. Once their fireflies rise into the night and the party can hear the voices of deceased friends, the landscape becomes hazy and pre-Rifts cities fade into view in front of them. The party has a night of modern, undisturbed city if they choose. It's awesome. It's exactly what would happen in Rifts. He's really keyed in and tied into the whole background and the whole fluff of Rifts, and I absolutely love it. I think you should do it. I think you should publish it. I think somebody said to put it up on the drive-through RPG and just file off the serial numbers, and you can probably use it for just about any modern sci-fi horror fantasy game you can think of. There's a lot of stuff you can use there.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I'm actually thinking that what we should do is we should talk to Dustin and point him in the general direction of ICRPG. And not for him to convert this into ICRPG, but for him to see how Hankerin does things like the Doom Vault and how simple he does all of his room descriptions, because literally, like, he could take this and just with a couple of bullet points and a half-assed cheaply drawn map, he could really put something together inside of. I think we're going to have to start forcing him to do this. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'll call Dustin and twist his arm. I call that hankerizing it. Mm-hmm. When you take a little idea that you have and then you do all of the stuff that Hankerin has taught everybody on the other YouTube, on his YouTube pages and everything else that he's posted on his Google Plus page. You could easily apply a lot of his techniques to Savage Rifts. I know I have, and I'm really looking forward to starting another Savage Rifts campaign here locally with my local gaming group, applying some of his rules, some of his methods, some of his theories, a lot of his miniature work, a lot of his paper model stuff. There's just really great stuff that Hankerin is doing. I think we could apply a lot of that stuff. But you're right, Dustin should be able to apply a lot of those theories to his Anything Can Happen Thursdays. Heck, he could even write his own Google Plus page for Anything Can Happen Thursdays, and I'd subscribe to it. I think he's got some great ideas. Are you kidding me? The last one he put up last week, what appears to be Symbian snake oil salesman is hawking rhino beetle milk. Behind his tent are members of the post-apocalyptic cavalry. Absolutely just bonkers, dude. I love that. Love it. I can't wait to run them. I run them all. Yeah.
Do you ever remember the old dungeon magazines? Inside some of the dungeon magazines, you would get 4 or maybe like 5-page modules and stuff. But every once in a while, there would be what was called a side trek. And it was just a little 1-page little excursion. Maybe, you found like some kind of a cave or something like that, and you go explore it, or it was like a little 1 or 2 room dungeon thing that you could throw at your players in a side deal. That's what these things are like. He should build a book on these things. In fact, I think I'm going to talk to Jared Gunning and maybe get him kicked off the show until this is complete.
I think Dustin would love that.
Yeah, he'd just come gun me down. Savage Rifts G Plus Annual 2018. How's that? I know that you haven't done anything for it, but is there going to be a 2018 coming out? We're September right now, buddy. You only got a couple of months left to get this together.
Yeah, so I think everybody's chomping at the bit to find out what we're doing for the annual this year. And as you know, earlier this year in the spring, we started the character catalog. And I think the Savage Rifts annual this year is going to include the character catalog along with a couple of other things that we've added into there, onto the players' Google Plus page. The Cosmic Paladin is a really great twist on that. I want to see that character or that particular piece of fun little bits put together into a game. I want to see some of the Anything Can Happen Thursdays as sidebars in our 2018 catalog. I think that would be pretty neat. There's some really cool stuff going on. There's a lot of good pictures. There's some ideas I've gotten from Sean Masters and his El Dorado Broadcast Radio podcast. Absolutely loving some of those ideas. The Stormspire map that James Rocker put together in his world building area. I mean, just all this different stuff. There's been probably the last 3 or 4 months. Everyone else continues still to be absolutely awesome creators in writing up some new ideas and some new stuff. So going to try to compile them all together and see if we can get that posted up here before too long.
Yeah,
I have a feeling that it's going to be bigger than last year's annual.
Wow. That's going to be impressive.
Just the character classes alone, I think we have close to 45 different character creations, different NPCs, fully playable, pre-gen, twisted minds that they have come from. But they're going to be some great characters to play with. I can't wait to throw them into the game as NPCs and just enemies and bad guys and make them all evil or make them good or make them be a helpful sort to my player characters in the next campaign. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
The Cosmic Paladin Supersuit that you were talking about.
Yeah. Speaking of, man, that was really, really cool.
I love it when it comes with art because it puts such an image in your face. This guy looks like what's the dude with the broken nose, the blonde-haired actor that was in the he was in the movie with not Ben Affleck, Ben Stiller, where the two of them were like the supermodels. Remember? Do you know the guy I'm talking about?
Yes.
Owen something. That's who this guy looks like in his Cosmic Paladin supersuit. But it has a tinge of Great American Hero to it, which is pretty sweet. I really like this idea. You strap this on and all of a sudden, maybe there's some kind of nanobots that invade your bloodstream or something and maybe reprogram your brain to, fill it with all of this information on some kind of ancient paladin religious sect or something like that with these suits, right? Like Green Lantern almost, you got to swear the oath and whatnot. It's pretty neat, man. I really like that. This will be cool. I might make this guy a bad guy. Maybe he'll be in a cosmic anti-paladin super suit.
Oh, can you imagine? The suit is black instead of red, or maybe a really dark red, really, really deep. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the suit's pretty cool. Some of the stats that they're putting out on it, plus 30 armor MDC. I mean, that is mega wicked. That you're not going to be able to hit him with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and just imagine if this was the snake oil salesman in Dustin's Anything Can Happen Thursday. All of a sudden, you're bearing down on him for being a snake oil salesman, and he cracks out the black friggin' anti-paladin supersuit and just gives you what for?
Even better, he cracks the glitter boy suit. That'll open your eyes up.
Yeah, pretty neat, man. I like that. That's well done. We should actually figure out who C.A. Helmling. That's who put it together. Come to think of it. You want to give credit where credit's due, right? He's the one that posted that, which is pretty sweet. And then, John Nieper is running a play-by-post game. So I'm not sure if it's full. You can drop him a line in the G Plus community or head over to thesavagerifts.com and check it out. You see if you can't get a hold of him somehow. That post was about 2 weeks old, but like I said, me and Victor haven't made sweet podcasting love now in 2 months, so yeah, that's where we're at.
Stop it, Gary. You're making me feel bad.
Yeah, it is what it is, man. Busy people. Lives.
Busy people, busy lives. That's right.
Old fogies with jobs and full-time jobs and kids and the whole 9 yards. That said, let's shoot over to the Nexus and let's talk about some gear, man. I got questions.
Nexus points.
All right, Section 3. the sexist nexus points. No, just the nexus points.
No, that's a different show, Gary. That's the other show.
That's the Savage Blisters something or other podcast.
Okay. You guys look for that one. I'm sure Gary will be posting that soon.
All right. So that said, let's get into weapons. We're on page 89 of this book. I did some reading and I got some questions. And yeah, let's start them off. How many companies out there make gear? Who are the techno-wizard geniuses of Stormspire, the Triax, Chivalry and Sorcery? These are the ones I could find in the book. Everyman Designs, Northern Guns, and Strange Frontier Designs. Let's start with is that almost all of the companies that make gear, or is there like more companies in the 40 other books that are available?
There's a lot more other companies that make gear. Those are some of the big ones. The Coalition States, of course, makes their own gear. I believe Free Quebec has a line of glitter boys and power armor. Mexico, a lot of Texas and the Vampire Kingdoms, there is a small organization that has stolen technology from the Coalition. Oh, gosh, I forget what their name is called. They live in and around Arsno, the Arizona, Denver area. Let's see, what else is there?
So who are the techno-wizard geniuses of Stormspire, and where is Stormspire? Let me guess. Stormspire is near Ontario or Toronto or something like that, I think. Isn't it over on the East Coast? I'm just guessing from what I read, or maybe I was thinking of something else, but
I'm trying to remember where we put Stormspire. I think it's out on the East Coast. Yeah. I know it lies in the Federation of Magic.
So who are these guys? They're just a bunch of techno wizards that hang out in a giant spire made of storms, right?
They're like if you've ever played D&D's Eberron, you know what artificers are, right? They're the guys who make all the magic wands, the magic stoves, and the magic lights outside, and the magic stones you use for telephones, and all that other fun stuff. They're the same thing for the guys from Stormspire. They're just a bunch of mages that are really good at creating a lot of different stuff, a lot of different techno-wizard technology. They tend to replace a lot of plasma generators and ion generators and nuclear fission generators for energy, and they replace those with magic batteries. And they've done everything from large Titan-sized, mech warrior-sized giant robots, elemental type stuff that they can pilot, especially when they got in the war with the Coalition. They've created big old giant robots like that, entire buildings that are run off of mana batteries, and they run off of the energy of the earth, or they use ley line energy to be able to provide electricity, lights, and lots of magical tools and weapons and machines to make all the stuff. They're pretty much the engineers of the magic world, and they're primarily in the Federation of Magic, if I'm not mistaken, which is out on the East Coast.
So if you had a suit and it was powered by a nuclear fission, fusion, whatever it is device, and you shot that person right in the nuclear Shazam, would they just explode into dust? That would be it?
Well, it depends on how you want to play it. Technically, all that stuff is armored. So a good example is the Glitter Boy. The Glitter Boy has its engine in a backpack up and behind where the gun mounts and where all the ammo casings are for the large boom gun. If you would take a called shot at that, you'd still have to go through the armor plating. But if you allow it, you can say that incrementally you start to damage the machine to the point where I would say after 2 or 3 hits, just like wounds, if you make 2 or 3 called shots on that protected area, maybe the third shot would cause it to go boom, to cause it to nuke. And you would literally blow everyone up within a couple of miles radius. Because you're strapped onto a really huge power generator for a boom gun. But most of the other power suits are very, very similar. It's like hitting a jet plane in its engine. It's going to explode. You're going to have one heck of a nuclear fallout there.
So when you're playing and you're doing, your killing of the power suited or, whatnot guys, And let's say that you were to like blow your stuff up, or you've riddled the suit full of bullet holes and whatnot. When you go to buy or sell this, how would you go about it in game? Would you say, like, if you come across a guy, say the power suit's worth 100,000 or 200,000, right, credits or some crazy amount of money like that, but you and your party have just like literally turned it into what do you call those things that you when you're drawing a blank, you use it to drain the spaghetti.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It is just a piece of useless slag at that point,
right?
Or you're talking yeah, I know what you use it to drain the. It's not a sifter,
right? That's what I was thinking. Because anyway, geez,
I know what you're talking about.
No,
so I handle it just like we used to play it in the old Rifts games. The armor is no longer worth 100,000. It's worth 10,000 in raw metal. It's too heavy to wear or use without the engine or for it to function. It doesn't provide much protection other than, it doesn't even keep you warm because not even the interior of the suit would work. So you reduce the cost of the armor, and you would either have to get a weaponsmith, an armor smith, or maybe a combination of the two in order to get it repaired. That could be an adventure or a couple of adventures before you could get that glitter bore armor repaired. A lot of the times, some of my characters would rather just go out and purchase a new piece of armor instead of repairing the old one they have, but they get a little sentimental and they try to keep the original one in good working condition. So even a glitter boy that has taken, a number of hits and it's been damaged or it has some issues that need to get repaired, a lot of that turns into an adventure seed that I tend to move the plot with. I'll tell them the nearest place that they can get it repaired without having to cross the country or go would be to, somewhere near Phoenix, Arizona, or Mexico, or back into the CS territories in order for them to find someone to be able to repair it. And that starts a whole nother adventure. And really all it is I'm just moving names and people into different states or different parts of the U.S. in order to continue the storyline of what they're doing and what they're playing.
So is there a salvaging class or a salvaging skill inside? This is the way that I'm imagining it. One of my favorite things about playing 50 Fathoms is that when you fight a group of NPCs or critters or whatever, depending on what it is, like say it's commoners or say it's pirates, for every 5 pirates you get loot, and that loot is equal to like X amount of coins, D10 times 10, and a 1% chance that you're going to find a relic, which is a magic item, right? And let's say you fight like a mermaid princess. Well, she's got a bounty instead of loot. She has way more stuff. So I'm just wondering, it would be kind of neat if they had a salvage class inside of Savage Rifts where when you take down one of these power armor suits, the guy with the salvaging skill, or essentially Treasure Hound inside of 50 Fathoms gives you a bonus 25% coins and an extra 10% on top of the base. And if they had a salvaging class like that, would be kind of cool. You roll up and, you roll your dice, take your chances, and maybe get to scoop some loot out of this bad thing. Maybe you got to find some missiles or something like that. You cash it in for a little bit more than it's worth. But I don't think they have anything like that, do they?
Well, the operator class, he's a technical and mechanical master, so he would be the first place that I would go. Usually they have tools and repair, piloting, driving. They start with the ace and the MacGyver edges. So that would be kind of the first place I would go when it comes to repairing or jerry rigging any kind of armor to get it to work, particularly if they have if you have a glitter boy in the party. A lot of the times the operators begin with glitter boy as a starting gear. So usually that's where you're getting your first pilot or your first armor / salvage guy. But as far as I know of, in the Savage Rifts rulebook, there's nothing regarding, hold on, before I put my foot in my mouth.
I don't think there is. I think we've been through the edges, and I don't recall anything like that. I just think that would have been a slick edge to get. And like Treasure Hound, you get Salvager or something like that. And you could increase the amount of, basically the credits that you're going to get from picking stuff up, because you can maybe, look at this thing and realize that, okay, he's got a couple of missiles left and a bunch of bullets and whatnot, and you could pull him out of the suit kind of a thing. I just thought that'd be a neat idea.
I know where you're going with it. One of the things that you have to try to do as a GM when you're playing Savage Rifts is not to get too caught up in the minutia. If you're really worried about bullets, if you're really counting credits for every single one, the cost of every single item, well, you turn into an accountant's game instead of a role-playing game. And I've noticed that that's one of the things I like about Savage Worlds more than I liked about the original Palladium game, was that we're not caught up in all the minutia of counting. My left arm has 50 mega hit points. My right arm has 60. My body has 387. My left leg's down to 2. And you're counting on, and I have 13 bullets. I can fire a burst for 6 bullets a round. I get this bonus with this burst. I want to do a full auto. And next thing you know, you're sitting there with the calculator trying to figure it out 45 minutes later. So for me, for my games, I try to limit that as much as possible. I give them a rough estimate. Say the suit is worth 500,000 credits. It's down 50% to 250,000 credits, or it's down to 10% of that. I just use a quick frame of reference, and I tell them yes or no, it can be repaired. It'll cost you this much time, effort, money, or gathering of stuff. And all of a sudden, everybody starts scrounging for stuff like, I have empty E-clips. I have boots. I have a couple of tires off the car. Can we take the fender off of it and trade that in for some money? And they start getting creative. But we never talk specifics like, okay, you've got about half the money you'll need. He'll start work on it, but you need to come back and give him the other half. So they start looking for more expensive things. They start looking for Coalition Samus pilots to shoot out of the air to capture their armor and that kind of stuff, because it's valuable. Coalition technology is really valuable. You can get a lot for it on the black market.
One of the interesting things that I did read too was that if they have like the cred cards or whatever, they're biometrically coded to their owners. That's
correct. Whenever you pick up a cred stick, if it has, and there's different types of cred sticks in the game, but most of them are when you have them for yourself, it's zeroed out. So you'll have a blank one or an empty one, and you can put as many credits as your account will allow you to. A lot of adventurers will find that they can get credits or cred sticks or creds put on their cred sticks at most banking systems. And there is the coalition banking system. There's the black market banking system. There's some other major city-states that have a somewhat stable banking system. But really, the coalition is the one that's the most reliable and the most dependable. And that's primarily what they use. But if you're being chased, followed, or you're considered a criminal by the coalition, well, try using your cred stick at a coalition shop or somewhere where it gets connected to that network, and all of a sudden they know where you're at, and you start getting a lot of flack. And the first time, I don't tell player characters that. But then the second or third time where they start to see, hey, every time I use my cred stick, all of a sudden the coalition soldiers and dog boys show up. How is that happening? Like, well, hello, you're using coalition credit. You're using their money to buy your things. They're not stupid. They're not going to continue to use their credit. Or even better, they go to use their cred stick and they find that it's empty or that it's blocked and they can't use the money because the coalition has closed off all of their accounts. So then you have to hire someone to steal your own money back, and it turns into a whole nother Shadowrun type game, but that's risk for you.
So there is a way that you can take those things and try and have somebody jack them, right? Like if you were to find something like that. But
so you can get a cred stick, right? It looks like maybe a pencil or a flat little USB stick. It has a little screen on it. When you press the button, it'll tell you how many credits is on there. And if you hold your hand against the button, your thumb against the button, or your finger or whatever, it'll try to read it and it'll tell you error, or it'll beep or nothing will happen, but it'll tell you, 3,000 credits are on this cred stick. But you can't access it because you don't have the thumbprint. So you can take it to a fixer, you can take it to an operator, you can take it to someone on the black market, or maybe you can bribe someone at a bank or someone who knows how to do that stuff. Just like to jailbreak your iPhone, you can do the same thing with those. And you can get someone to break into it and steal the money or steal the creds and remove the creds off of it and put it onto, either change the fingerprint to your fingerprint or move the creds off of that onto an account that you can use universally. Maybe wipe the entire cred stick because you want to, get rid of those credits from whoever owned it so they don't have access to them anymore. There could be 101 things that you could do there. And that's always a lot of fun too, because you start messing with the player character's money.
So would it be a good idea that if you were searching somebody and you found these cred cards, should you just lop their hands off and take their hands with you anywhere you go? Like,
I'm not condoning violence, but yes, that works too.
Right?
And
That's
you don't
one
need
way.
the whole hand; you just need the finger if it makes any sense to anybody.
Oh, yeah, I just cut the fingers off. But make sure that you keep like the finger. Maybe you gotta like elastic band it to the cred stick that he had. So if you just threw them all in a pile.
So that leads me to a story, a short one. Used to have a player that I had many years ago when we were just out of college playing Rifts, and he was like a thief. He was a vagabond character, and he was notorious for like scavenging. He could find credits in a forest full of chipmunks. I mean, it was ridiculous. But he was smart. He would never shoot for the hands. He would never shoot weapons out of their hands. And he would always steal a cred stick and unlock the cred stick, dead or alive, with that person's hand or finger, if that's all that was left sometimes. Take the gloves off, unlock the cred stick, and then he would connect the two cred sticks together and dump the creds from one to another. He had a little black box that we would plug two cred sticks in, use his fingerprint, use the other person's fingerprint, and they would tie up and match, and it would suck all the credits into his. It was a pretty neat little thing that he spent a lot of money getting that from the black market. He actually had to steal it from a bank where it's a transaction machine, and it's like the size of a small hard drive. You can just connect a bunch of cred sticks to it, and if you have the fingerprints, it'll do what it needs to do. It doesn't detect whether you're alive or dead. It just wants a fingerprint scan. So he learned how to fool it. He learned how to take fingerprint scans and peelings and how to copy them off and get how to fake it on a machine. He got so good, he was like a fingerprint hacker, cred stick hacker. He was very, very specialized. But after a while, his reputation got around as one of those guys, and adventurers would come looking for him to say, "Hey, I've got 100,000 credit in stolen cred sticks. I'll give you 10% if you can, do your magic." And sure. And 20 minutes later, here you go. And he's 10 grand richer. He loved it. He absolutely loved it. He played that character to the T for years, like for a decade. It was a lot of fun to watch him play, to watch him work. He was a devious little man.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's friggin' savage, man. What an animal.
Dude, I'm telling you, it was crazy. He's the only one I know that literally kept a ledger of all the people he was taking money, the transactions, where he was getting it from. And he wasn't even an accountant. And I told him he should have gone to college to be an accountant.
All right, so those were the questions that I had. Now, those questions all spawned from me reading through this actual section. Believe it or not, I did my homework. I read through the weapon stuff, and that's where all of these things were derived from. So, last episode we finished off with the armor. So this episode we're starting with the close combat weapons and ranged weapons personal. So things like grenades, grenade launchers, and stuff like that. Do you make this kind of stuff commonplace in your games?
Not so much. One of the things you got to remember is the entire planet went through an apocalypse. It went through a change. Entire cities were destroyed, infrastructures, radar, heavy weapons, military weapons. Everything that existed in the previous worlds was destroyed, damaged, buried, or really become technology that we can't simply use anymore. So I found it in my games. I tend to play a lot of the high-powered weapons pretty rarely. And I'll tell you the reasons I use behind that. If you see a plasma gun lying in the rubble of a city, the first question you should be asking is, why hasn't anyone taken this already? Is it working, or is it worth anything? Because it might be worthless junk. It's an old dead plasma gun. Maybe it has a burned out core to it or something that it won't fire. Or is this a trap, and should I be careful of what I'm picking up, or why is it lying? It's like leaving a bag of gold in the middle of the street, right? The first thing you're going to do is look around to see if anybody's watching you. Second thing you're going to do is see if that's real or not. And then the third thing you're going to ask yourself is, why hasn't anybody taken it before? So if you find loot like a plasma cannon, an earthshaker cannon, a draining blade, an impact hammer, why hasn't anybody picked it up? Unless you found it as part of like a secure room of a weapon cache of a mercenary company you just happen to destroy or kill or take over, or they're giving you or selling you weapons out of. Well, then it would make sense to see a couple of those things. But for the regular citizen just wandering the wilderness, it's very unlikely you're going to come across a a cache of 60 cans of ammo for an M16, an M60, or even a box of grenades, unless you happen to come across an old army base and you found a cache of weapons, but there was just ammo left over. Okay, that makes some sense. But walking down the street, you're not going to find things like, plasma cannons, light ion pistols, plasma ejectors, the Wilkes GL-20 laser rifle. A lot of that stuff is too valuable for your own survival, let alone for the amount of credits that you can get for it. So in my games, a lot of those weapons are pretty rare. You only find them when you defeat the opponent that's carrying them, or there's a specific purpose of why you're finding so many weapons. My players have gotten kind of leery when I happen to have them break open a weapons bunker or a cache of ammo or something like that, because they're like, okay, why is he giving it away? Does that mean we're going to need it? Because they tend to get into pretty big fights, and then they go looking for weapons. You have to have, they start shooting at the guns, and they realize they're bouncing off the glitter boys because they're not laser weapons, and it gets to be a whole lot of fun.
So, ion weapons.
Yeah.
Ion-based weaponry relies on an energy process that gathers ions from the immediate area and projects a stream downrange. Northern Gun is the premier manufacturer of personal ion weapons in North America. So this is where I started getting all these names from. Triax, based in the new German Republic, also has these weapons. Now, I guess anything can be an ion weapon or not. I shouldn't say it like that. What I mean is ion weapon the same thing as a trapping? Like you find an ion weapon and you can say it is whatever it is, but it's an ion weapon. And then mechanically, you're going to get a +2 to shooting due to the spread effect of the stream.
So it acts like an energy shotgun, pretty much. It gives you +2 bonus to shooting because of the way the stream moves out. It's kind of erratic. When you think of an ion gun, I think of the Ghostbusters gun.
Yeah, okay.
When you shoot the beam out and the beam kind of goes in whatever direction it kind of wants to, you can just kind of veer it in a certain direction, and everything within that space or that area is going to get hit by it. That's usually what I see an ion weapon.
Yeah.
You can use it as a trapping to create different variations of the same weapon. It's up to you, but that's a really simple way to be able to create unique weapons in Rifts, to be able to use the different weapon types like ions, lasers, and plasmas, and just use those as trappings and plugins to be able to create your own. In Rifts, a lot of the weapons have very specific names, numbers, types, and styles. Ion weapons tend to be like light ion pistols, ion blasters, pulse rifles. Some of those are semi-automatic. Some of them are automatic. It just depends on the size. But a lot of them have different damage bonuses and modifiers. Like an ion pistol can be anywhere from 1 to 3 D6 in damage. Have a basic 10, 20, 40 range for a pistol. A dozen shots. Really lightweight, but it could be extremely expensive. It could be like, I think it's, if you look over on page 93, it's 5,000 credits for an ion pistol. When you can pick up a laser pistol for just a little bit more, or sometimes a little bit less. It just depends on what it is.
That's freaking steep. That's why I was asking about the credits. Like, it just seems like when you're trying to buy something and you need Battle Fury Blade, 13 million credits. How do you get 13 million credits?
A lot of glitter boys. Well, you can make so if you find, say, a glitter boy and you find just the cannon, if the cannon's in good shape and it's maybe not functional because, you need ammo, you need a power source, that kind of stuff, you could easily get 250,000 credits just for the cannon alone without it being functional or operational. That's a lot of credits. You find a couple of those or a couple of boots or a couple of arms from a couple of robots, maybe some ammo and a few other things. You can gather up the credits pretty quickly. Things are really, really valuable. That's why I make the big, powerful mega damage weapons and other really cool stuff, cool tech, pretty rare. That's why it's so expensive, because it's pretty rare. The chances of you coming across, a destroyed glitter boy armor that hasn't been scavenged, destroyed, and, isn't being sold by somebody else is really, really rare. You're really lucky to come upon that. So when my players find things like, old UAR-1 robot armor that's blown in half and, the top torso is still there, the first thing they're thinking, okay, how do I tie that to my truck and tow it to the nearest, salvage yard or, coalition post or town where I can sell that for scrap metal, let alone for what it's actually worth. Because things are really expensive and really rare. A lot of mercenary companies pick up their own weapons, pick up their dead, recycle a lot of their weapons and vehicles because they know they're worth a lot of money. Same thing with the coalition. They may have the biggest armed forces and the most expensive high-tech weaponry there is, but they're not stupid. They know the value of being able to recycle their own weapons, spent E-clips, empty ammo casings. Plus, it keeps all those weapons out of their enemies' hands. And, well, that's what the coalition does best.
Nice.
So for all those high prices, that's pretty normal. It would not surprise me at all if guys are carrying around a couple of million credits worth of equipment or a couple of million credits on their cred sticks. We used to do it all the time in rifts, in the original Palladium rifts.
That's very cool. So the Ion is essentially basically the shotgun in rifts. I see what it's doing here. I get the gist of that. Yeah. And then the laser guns, I find this is actually pretty sweet. There's no recoil on these. So could you get like a fully automatic laser gun that has no recoil? So like it sort of eliminates the need for the rock and roll edge? Right? Because that's sort of what happens with rock and roll edge. The idea is when you're firing a fully auto, the recoil starts making you just sort of spray it everywhere. And rock and roll eliminates that a little bit.
Yeah. You've got to remember, you don't have to remember, you just don't know. Laser weapons in rifts are like flashlights. You pull the trigger, an energy beam continuously blows out until you let go. So you can only get laser pistols and rifles to be semi-automatic at best. Anything automatic laser weaponry is going to be like a Gatling gun or a heavier laser type weapon. It's going to do a lot more damage. That can do bursts of stream, and that's like a pulse laser. That's a little different. So the two things that are great about lasers is they make no sound, they have no recoil.
Ooh, I never thought of that. That's really cool.
And they all work off of what's called a universal E-clip, a universal energy clip. Most of them work off of universal energy clips. So you can disconnect one from a dead coalition Skelebot, pull it out of the rifle that it has and plug it into your pistol, and it will almost always work. So as long as you got a power source, you can use that weapon. Wilkes laser rifles and laser pistols are well known for their reliability and their ease of use. And I've seen them fired underwater, fired in off of mirrors, use the glitter boy to bounce shots off of his reflective armor. Nice. I mean, I've seen lots of tricks with Wilkes laser rifles. Like the Wilkes 227 is a pulse laser rifle. It's a semi-automatic, and it does a 3-round burst. So 2d6 plus 1 damage with a 3-round burst at a 72 square range. There ain't a board that's been built yet that's longer than 72 squares, 72 inches. You're talking 6 feet.
Yeah, you got to get into a little theater of the mind to sort of pull that off, which is pretty slick.
Exactly. And that's where Savage Rifts differs from a lot of the usual games that Savage Worlds is used to playing in. It really pushes the envelope for ranges, for damage, for armor, and for the variety of stuff. Laser pistols, pulse pistols, rail guns. I mean, some of this stuff is handheld weaponry. You can get rail guns that are an oversized rifle, underslung, or even in sniper rifles, light rail guns that you can carry without power armor assist. In your own hands, if you're strong enough, like a juicer or a DB, they might be strong enough to be able to fire those off. So the sky's the limit when it comes to how much damage you can do. We've seen 35, 40 points fired in one round.
Man, just in regular Savage Worlds, I've seen that.
Yeah, exactly. So you can get into the high double digits easy, the high 50 teens, 60 teens with just some of the regular rocket launchers, plasma weapons, and ion weapons. Yeah, it can be done. Let your dice explode a couple times. See what happens.
In my 50 Fathoms campaign, in the last little one that I was doing there, there's this. I have all the players playing themselves, and one of the ladies that I play with, Brittany, she's very small. She's very petite, maybe five and a bit, right? Maybe 100 pounds, kind of a thing. So they're at the red pool, and the shaman guy that's there is her, and she jumps on his back and tries to stab, but she's got a 4 in strength. She can't do any damage to him, and he flings her off and casts a spell and hits her for a wound. She looks at me, she's like, "I'm going to kick him in the nuts." And she hits him, and
That's
she
awesome.
aces. She does enough damage to wound him, so he's taken a wound. And then just as this happened, I'm like, okay, so he's doubled over, holding on to his goods. This other guy, Matthew, rolls in with an axe, and axe chops the shaman in the back of the head as he's bent over, and hits for like 34 points of damage.
Oh my gosh!
To the back of the head.
Wow.
So yeah, and that's just in regular
crazy.
Savage Worlds, man.
Yeah, that's just regular Savage Worlds. Imagine if she was using a vibroblade and he was using some type of explosive weapon, or even just like a chain greatsword. The juicer with a chain greatsword. You're talking the low 40s on a bad day.
That's crazy. So lasers do heavy damage, heavy weapon damage? Like, I don't see that it says anywhere that they can. I do see particle beam weapons are based on a variant form of lasers. It says they have shorter ranges but pack a heavier punch, but it still doesn't say heavy weapon. And I noticed that it says that lasers also give you a +2 on your vigor rolls to avoid bleeding out. I guess that's from cauterizing the wound or something like that.
Correct. That's where that comes from. I've seen many times where you get pencil-sized laser beams going through their bodies. They've got 2 or 3 wounds, and the wounds are smoking because the lasers are so hot. It's literally burning the hole through the body, through the armor of whatever it's hit.
Nice.
You also have a different problem with another type of weapon called plasma weapons. Plasma weapons are like flamethrowers that you can use at a distance. They eject plasma in pulses and like almost globules, as you would, almost like it's spitting out energy. But when it hits you, it's like being hit with a Molotov cocktail every time you get hit by one with super high hot plasma. So you don't get the normal saves like you normally do. I think it says they're heavy and bulky weapons because they're fairly big, have large barrels. So you have to have it has the snap fire quality on all plasma weapons. And let's see what it says. Plasma hits a target all at once, engulfing the target and affecting the least armored area of the body. This is really cool if you have juicers that are not wearing full environmental armor. If you have power armor or robots that have open windows, open access panels, or have been damaged, so where they're no longer environmentally sealed, you have a good chance of igniting the target on fire. I think it's at a 1 in 6 chance to do 1d10 continuous damage until it's doused. Yikes. And to make it even worse, it's all mega damage.
So if you're inside the suit and on fire, you're taking...
Eject, get out.
Yeah, that's what it is. Rocket launchers. Now we're talking old school. Basically, they're just missiles that you launch, and they do mega damage.
Forget, they fire in a straight line or a fairly straight line. They're not, heat seekers, tracers, or tracking types of missiles. But the nice thing about it is that you can reload them into a regular missile launcher or whatever. I think you do like a repair -2 roll. And yes, rockets are mega damage weapons. They have those high-powered warheads. And I think there's a whole bunch of different ones. I know they have, there's rocket launchers that are portable, then rocket launchers that are mounted. But when you start getting into stuff like mini missiles, small missiles, medium missiles, large missiles, and we're talking missiles like, Sidewinder missiles, all the different missiles that come off of helicopters, rockets, larger heat-seeking missiles, those kind of stuff. Those are all classed differently by light, medium, and heavy, and they all have different types of explosives, at least in the original Rifts game. Here for Savage Worlds, they've kind of reduced all those down to mini missile, light, medium, and heavy. Even a mini missile does 5d6 mega damage, and each one has a small burst template.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, and it's expensive. It's like $1,000 a missile.
1,000. I was reading that the Glitter Boys, whatchamacallit, are like 30,000, I think, for like a belt of rockets or something like that. Like,
that ammo for a railgun.
It's insane. Next in the agenda there is heavy weapons, heavy and vehicular weapons. So this is where you start mounting things onto your hot rods, like ion cannons and stuff like that. Now we're getting into like the seriously like heavy,
Yeah,
10,
you're getting
10
into,
D10 kind
large
of.
armor piercing rounds, 45, 50 millimeter rounds. You're talking laser cannons that are connected to power generators, not, a small electrical pack or a small nuclear power pack from your armor. I mean, you're talking multi-barreled weapons, Gatling weapons, plasma ejectors the size of your torso, that kind of stuff. You can do some serious damage with some vehicle weapons. A lot of the times when I play my games, I tend to not bring vehicle weapons against the party unless they've really, really asked for it or it's the right place, because you can turn them into gazpacho pretty quick.
turn them into pink mist in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Puff the Magic Dragon. Yep, that's what you can do with those guys. I mean, because a lot of them are, they not only require the minimum strength for you to be able to use. So a lot of the times, dragons, juicers, and really big power armor, juiced up power armor guys, they're really the only ones that can carry a lot of the smaller vehicle-mounted weapons like mini railguns, large-size railguns like the boom guns or whatever, as handheld weapons. I've seen a lot of juicers do it. I've seen a lot of dragons and some DBs that are really, really buffed up be able to do them. And a lot of them have a D12 plus 2 minimum strength. There's not a lot of characters that can do that. Even a lot of the, super powerhouses, the Masters of Magic or a lot of the Mars guys can't do that. Most of the Lords of War should, like a Cyborg, a Glitter Boy pilot, a Juicer, and a Dragon. And maybe like if you allowed a superpower character that has a lot of strength, like a Superman type character with a D12, and even then it has to be D12 plus 2, you're going to be pumping a lot of creation points and edges to be able to get that strength that high for you to be able to rip that mini railgun off that helicopter to be able to use it against your enemy.
I like that the weapons in this book sort of remind me a lot of like D&D. Like, it's one of the things that can sometimes take away from Savage Worlds is like, it's cool that a bolt is a bolt is a bolt and you trap it however you want, whether you're going to be shooting peanuts or you're going to be spraying oil, and it's still going to do 2d6. But one of the things that I do kind of miss about sort of Dungeons and Dragons is every once in a while it's kind of fun to min-max. And the way that they've got the weapons set up inside of this, everything sort of does its own little deal. Like this Battle Fury blade is strength plus 2d8. Then you've got like the chainsword does strength plus 2d10. You look at some of the ion weapons and they're 1 to 3d6 plus 1. Like it's kind of neat, so that it gives I just feel like incentivized to go look for other or better weapons, which is one thing. I guess, that I kind of maybe like, now that I'm looking at it, I feel like I miss it, but I think that I don't really like, in practice, I don't think I'm going to miss it too much.
Yeah. Just like all the Savage World stuffs, all the Savage World settings, Rifts is, and a lot of the guys who wrote this, Sean Patrick Fanning and everyone else, they did a really good job at consolidating thousands of pages of information into a little settings book that still gives you a lot of that variety, not all the variety, and not so much that you're doing accounting at the table, but it gives you enough variety to where you can still use it in that Munchkin kind of mode where I've got a railgun. I want it to be an automatic railgun, a super railgun, an extended range with a sniper rifle railgun. It still gives you the ability to make some variations off of that, whether it's grenades, ion weapons, laser weapons, plasma guns, whatever fits your characters. Flicks your character's bick. That's what I like about it. They did a really great job at putting those rules together. It's all in there. It's still there. You just kind of have to go and dig through and sift through all the stuff that's written for the game. I do that a lot. The way when I play my games, when I play fantasy games, I give the characters whatever weapons and whatever things they want. I ask them what magic items they want to go through, and the paladin has a sword and he wants a better sword and a magic sword and a giant cleaver, and so I allow him to build up his weapon, replace it with something better, or maybe he gets an heirloom weapon, or he's always had an artifact weapon, he didn't know how to turn it on, lots of different stuff to be able to increase their abilities and their powers through their loot, through their treasure. And in Rifts I do the same thing. I start out with guys that have laser pistols and maybe an ion rifle amongst all of them. And then next thing you know, the guy with the ion rifle goes, ooh, I want a plasma cannon. And well, maybe not a plasma cannon, but you can get a snub-nosed plasma cannon. And then upgrade that. Maybe he gets a laser sight. Maybe he gets a smart gun. Maybe he gets a smart gun link, goggles, cybernetics, or something. And I'm always upgrading the stuff that they have, because when they do find stuff in my games, it's really rare. And I want to make sure that the rare stuff that they do find is useful and pushes their character and their story a little bit. So I'm kind of more thoughtful when it comes to what I'm putting in the games and how I'm awarding them. But you can go in the opposite style and just go Munchkin and say you find a cache of weapons with 30 Wilkes laser rifles, 13 plasma cannons, a box of grenades, a variety of ammo, and take your pick and let them go crazy. It's your game. You're the one that's going to have to manage it later anyways.
I'm just thinking that's because everybody says that the old school Rifts is basically so mechanically or crunchy. I think, like you said, they sifted through all of these pages and condensed it, which is why inside of Rifts you get the feeling of there's so many weapons that do so many different strengths and have so many different bonuses and different skills. But that's because of where Rifts sort of comes from. In order to make the setting feel true, they needed to mimic that. Right. As opposed to just saying
we have
a bolt is a bolt.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of vehicle special weapons, close combat. That's the first. That Savage Rifts was the first Savage World setting where I had seen an entire section dedicated to just weapons. Because there's a lot of variation to the same thing. A gun's a gun. There's only so much technology and so many variations that you can include, even with the imagination, of Kevin Sembita. There's only so many ways you can shoot things. And so trying to condense that all down and trying to make it into, just a couple of pages or paragraphs of explanation and a couple of charts, man, hands down to them. I look at it every day and it seems to amaze me everything that they've managed to do in just a short amount, a couple hundred pages.
So one last thing before we split into the fray. We can get into the weapon and armor damage and the toughness and the heavy weapon damage and all that stuff later. But I was just asking this question to Eric Lamoureux the other day because I know in regular Savage Worlds this isn't a thing. But my players are about to go up against Stumpy Pete. Stumpy Pete has a treasure, and he's going to take them to this island where they're going to fight a giant monk ape. And this monk ape has this ability where he can throw rocks, and these stones weigh like 100 pounds, and it says they do heavy weapon damage. So I was asking Eric, I'm like, I don't recall reading anything inside of regular Savage Worlds where if you take a heavy weapon like this rock and throw it, it says that it does heavy weapon damage. Now, if you throw it at a boat, it's going to do the heavy weapon damage to the boat. But if you throw it at a person,
squish, just like grape.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think you had mentioned, or we had read somewhere before, that in original Rifts, if you get shot with heavy weapon damage without having your heavy weapon armor, isn't it like times 100 or times 1,000 or something like that? Yeah,
usually it's an instant kill. If you have a regular civilian and no combat body armor, or any armor, or even if they are in combat body armor, it's not going to be mega damage armor. If you have a civilian, say in combat SWAT armor, but it's not mega damage armor, and you shoot them with the Wilkes laser rifle or a laser pistol, that person's going to take 1d6 times 100 in hit point damage. It's very unlikely anybody will survive more than one hit with a laser. You shoot them with the laser gun and their body slides in half because they got cut in half. Yeah. There was no protection there. Yes, in original Palladium's Rifts, that's how mega damage works.
How did they convert that into Savage Rifts? Is that a thing?
Yes, that's where the heavy rolls come in.
Okay, so let's say that you're your techno wizard. You haven't engaged your heavy weapon armor, and you know what I mean, like your spell armor, and you get hit with a weapon that does heavy weapon damage. Like, what does heavy weapon damage in here? Like, let's say a missile hits you. You're just role playing that like you've just become a stain. You're just a stain.
You are now salsa on the ground.
Okay. But I was just wondering if that was an official rule inside of Savage Riffs, or if that's just how you're like, that's how you're rolling.
That's the way I play it, because that's the way we've always played it. This is why my player characters at the table always have extra characters lying around. It
just makes sense, and it's one of the things that sort of drew me away from, or now that I'm not playing 5th edition anymore, or like hit point attrition systems. There was one of the podcasts today was talking about what do you do when one of your players jumps onto a grenade and he can actually absorb the damage because he's got 100 hit points and the grenade does 3d6. At most, he's taken 18 hit points. He's got 100. This guy could literally jump on 5 grenades, but in real life, you're pretty much paced the first one you jump on.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you survive the first one, you're not going to be the same. You're not going to be a combat level character anymore.
That's crazy stuff. All right, let's get over into the fray. We're going to wrap this up, and we're going to spend the next hour, me and you, talking about our other sweet podcast.
So here we go.
Let's do it. Into the fray.
Whoa, bloody hell. Oh man, I love this guy. Do we have to go yet? Yes? Oh, please. Of course we do. We've got work to do. Please, can we stay just a little bit longer? Stop it, Jeffrey. Right, come on back through the rifts there. Fine. Anyhow.
Well, the sweet sound of that rift opening means it's time to pack up and portal out. Take us out with some contact info, Mr. Commander Victor Keene. Man, when's the last time I called you that? Jeez, DJ Jazzy.
About 2 months ago.
Literally.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can reach us at the Murder Hobo Show at gmail.com, or you can get us on Twitter if you can keep it under 140 characters at Murder Hobo Show. Or, of course, over at Google Plus page for the Murder Hobo Show under the Nerds International banner. Or you can reach out to myself directly at the Google Plus Savage Rifts page, where the community is always active, aware, awake, and throwing up some crazy stuff for riffs.
Nice. Be sure to swing by the Murder Hobo Show on Podbean and check out the show notes for some links to some cool, creative people, places, and thingages.
Love Podbean. There's some good stuff there.
What else we got, Victor?
Don't forget to catch the other podcasts, Threats, Treats, and Timers, where we talk about mine and your new love. It is Index Card RPG.
It is my new love. It really is. I got some stories.
Like it.
You know, the thing is, it's like coming from 5th edition to Savage Worlds, I'm like, where has this been my whole life? You know? It's like hot oil on your nipples, kind of, where has this been my whole life?
Yikes. Yeah, it's got a visual, ladies and gentlemen. Wow.
Right? And
yeah,
then,
you were the naysayer, though. You were the one that you were saying, oh, yeah, okay, Index Card, I see. Victor's on another crazy train again. And you were like, nothing can be better than Savage Worlds. You were the biggest Savage Worlds advocate we had. And then you played the game. Yeah,
I went from 5e I actually consider super crunchy, to Savage Worlds, which is it's a medium salsa, right?
It's not chunky, but it's not smooth.
It's got
some bits in there,
right? And then you go to ICRPG, which is like Super Rules Light, and it's just like, wow, man! It makes Savage Worlds in a sense feel like 5th edition did when I switched to Savage Worlds. It's just the craziest thing. Love it. Anyways, that said, check out ICRPG and our other podcasts, Threats, Treats, and Timers. And tune in next time. Well, we will have another action-packed show. We're going to be tackling more on the player's guide. Yeah, I think we're doing vehicles next time. There's some stuff that I want to...
vehicles. I'm looking forward to that one. There's a lot of fun stuff that's not even in the books.
Yeah, and there's going to be some changes because they are getting rid of acceleration and a few other things in the next one, which is going to be kind of interesting. So maybe I'll do a little research and we can figure out how that's supposed to work.
I'm going to go ask a couple of the writers for the next 3 Rifts books to give me the rundown of what's going to be covered and what's in it. And you know what? I might have one of them on the show. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen.
Stay tuned. Adios, amigos. Tune out now. Goodbye.
Hobo Show is not affiliated with or endorsed by any companies mentioned on this show. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of their respected owners. All items are used under fair use and for educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Murder Hobo Show, copyright 2017, all rights reserved.